Today we're looking at Psalm 96. As I said yesterday, that Psalm 95 to 100 seem to be a set of 6 songs, and probably 7 with 93 that were probably sung at the same time during worship. Okay, and in order to understand the context of Psalm 96, we need to go to 1 Chronicles 16. In 1 Chronicles 16, which is where the Ark of God is brought to Jerusalem, and it says in verse 1, they brought the Ark of God and set it inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And so this is the tabernacle of David, which had the Ark of the Covenant. Then we are told in verse 4 that he appointed some of the Levites to minister before the Ark of the Lord. And we've, like names like Asaph, we are familiar with those names. And in verse 7, it says, that day David first committed to Asaph and his associates this psalm of thanks to the Lord. And from verse 8 to verse 36 is this psalm of thanks that we are told that David committed to Asaph and his associates. Now the beginning part of this psalm is in Psalm 105. So when we do Psalm 105, we'll come to that. The ending part of this psalm is Psalm 106, in Psalm 106. But from 23 to 33 is almost exactly Psalm 96. In fact, it is Psalm 96. Just some words, one or two words here and there are slightly different, or the way the sentence is constructed. But later on you can go and read Psalm 96 and then read this 1 Chronicles 16, 23 to 33. And you will see that it's almost exactly the same psalm. So this is a long psalm that David wrote while the ark was being installed in Jerusalem, and parts of that became 2 other psalms, and the main portion became Psalm 96. So remember I said yesterday that though there is no author mentioned, the scholars have suggested that David may have written these Psalms 95 to 100. So this lends some credence to that. Obviously David wrote Psalm 96, and the reason why they did not maybe put a title there is because it was actually taken from the middle of 1 Chronicles 16 and made a psalm by itself. So David is obviously the author of Psalm 96. And the context is the installation of the ark, or the inauguration, effectively the inauguration of the tabernacle of David. We had the tabernacle of Moses, and now we have the tabernacle of David. Okay, so 3 sections, actually 4 sections to the, is it 3 or 4? Yeah, it's 4 sections to this. Why have I made 4 sections? Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. The first section is 3 verses. Sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord all the earth. Sing to the Lord, praise His name, proclaim His salvation day after day, declare His glory among the nations, His marvelous deeds among all peoples. Worship is meant to be universal. Okay. Now this is so interesting. Psalm 96, Israel is not mentioned. Not once. Now in that larger psalm which David wrote in 1 Chronicles 16, it starts and ends with Israel, the God of Jacob, all of the usual things we expect in a psalm. But this whole section, Psalm 96, there's not a single mention of Israel or Jacob or anything of the sort. The tabernacle is mentioned maybe twice, just in passing. And so the whole sense of this psalm is universal. Okay, for example, the earth is mentioned 7 times, either earth or world is mentioned 7 times. The nations or the peoples, which are more or less the same thing, are mentioned 5 times. Creation is mentioned 5 times, along with things in creation. So we see this whole a completely different picture of worship in this psalm. And it is really so interesting that David would write this psalm at the inauguration of his tabernacle. The tabernacle was such an exclusive thing. God coming and dwelling among his people. Yeah, it was really the sign, the evidence of the exclusiveness of the Israelites and God's people. In the middle of that, David has written this psalm that is got nothing to do with Israel. It's all about the earth and the nations and creation. The third thing to realize in this psalm is that God is only called Yahweh in this section. In the Psalm 96, he is never called Elohim or anything else. He is only called Yahweh. Okay, verse 1. Sing to the Lord a new song, sing to the Lord all the earth. And then in verse 2, of course, sing to the Lord, praise his name. Okay. 5 times in this psalm, later on it comes again, 5 times that word sing is used. Okay. And what it tells us is that singing, and obviously the music that goes with the singing, is a key element of worship. Often we are told that worship is not just singing. It's not just when we say worship, we refer to singing and music, right? For example, on Sunday I'll say, today so and so will lead us in worship. Okay. Now we know that worship is all of life. Worship is lifestyle. Worship is more than all of that. And yet the reality is that singing and music is a key element and a key manifestation of worship. There's no getting around that. So many of the psalms, and of course then dance will come into that. When there's music, there's dance, that kind of thing. Okay, there's no getting around that fact that the major way in which we worship is through singing and music. I always remember this story of Matt Redman tells the story, of the Heart of Worship. He says that for 6 months, and possibly there was a reason for that. They didn't sing at all in their church because the pastor said, let's find different ways to worship. And that's all very well and good, and they obviously had a wonderful time. But the thing that always strikes me is, how did Matt Redman then express that experience? He wrote a song. At the end of the day, he wrote a song to express the experience of 6 months of not worshipping with song and music. Singing and music is so integral to worship, and the word comes 5 times in this psalm and 3 times in the beginning. This call to worship being universal. There's a triple call. Sing, sing, sing. 3 sentences all starting with the word sing. Okay. What do we sing to the Lord? A new song. A new song. The Hebrew can also mean something fresh, something new, something fresh. Okay. Something therefore that's coming from something new within you, not the same old words, not the same old everything, but something new. Okay. Sing to the Lord a new song. We sing to the Lord. Okay, so there was a whole generation when the songs were about him, and they still sometimes there can be songs about God because you're declaring or proclaiming, but here you're singing to him, which is very much the nature of worship. I mean, what they call contemporary Christian worship is really so much about singing to God rather than about him. And this is so critical. Sing to the Lord all the earth. That's what I said. It's not about Israel. He's telling all the earth rather than just Israel to sing to the Lord and to sing to him a new song. Okay, what is the content of this singing? Of course, praise his name, that is who he is. God's names are a reflection of or expression of who He is, proclaim His salvation, that is what He does or what He has done, day after day, so ceaselessly, all the time. Proclaim His salvation, that phrase together, it means, yes, it means proclaim His freedom, of course, but it was the word used when there were glad tidings, good news. And for us in the New Testament age, it has such a connotation because the gospel means good news. And what is the gospel? It is good news of salvation. And then verse 3, what do we declare? No, not what do we declare. What is the earth being called to declare? To declare among the nations, among the peoples. Nations and peoples are synonyms. So it's parallelism there. So declare His glory, that is His honor, His splendor. Declare His marvelous deeds. The actual word is wonders. Again, declare His nature, declare His works, what He does, who He is among the nations and the people. You see the parallelism there, nations and peoples, and glory and wonders. His glory is manifested in His wonders. His honor, His splendor is manifested in the things that He does, the awesome works, His wonders. And so that's the first part. Worship is meant to be universal, and the earth is being told to declare to the nations. Israel is not even in the picture here. So if the earth is being called to declare to the nations, what are the nations doing at this time? They are worshipping idols. And so the second section is Yahweh versus idols, verses 4 to 6. For great is the Lord and most worthy of praise. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Splendor and majesty are before Him. Strength and glory are in His sanctuary. So this comparison of Yahweh with the idols, it follows logically because you are telling the nations, turn away from what you worship and worship Yahweh, who is being declared by all the earth. And so the comparison is straightforward. Who is Yahweh? Yahweh is of course great. He is most worthy of praise. That praise that at the moment is going to idols in the nations. He is the only one to be revered or feared, as opposed to idols. Why? Because they are made, but He is the maker. For the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. So they are made. He is the maker, not just of everything, even of the heavens. And remember, so many idols are to do with the heavenly bodies. He is to be worshipped. He is worthy of praise because of His splendor, His majesty, His strength, His glory. All these attributes are intrinsic to Yahweh, and the implication is none of them are true of the idols that the nations are worshipping. So I found this a slightly funny statement by the commentator Kaufman. He says this writer once visited the temple of Diabutsu in Japan, and a number of the niches surrounding the great idol. So it looks like there was this great idol in the center, I suppose, and there were these small niches where there would be small idols, different deities. I'm assuming that it sounds like that. So a number of the niches surrounding the great idol were adorned in posters, printed with red and black letters. It seems to be in capitals, carrying the message, "These gods are out for repair." The near insanity of idol worship is surely indicated by this. Our God does not need to be repaired. Okay. But very, very pointedly, shall I say, Yahweh, the Lord is, he's called Yahweh, and the word Elohim is used for all the other gods, to make that comparison. Okay, so then we go to, so he's made the argument for Yahweh versus the idols, and now the nations are invited to worship. So there's been a declaration to the nations from the earth. There's been the argument for Yahweh versus idol worship, and now the nations are being invited to worship in verses 7 to 10. Ascribe to the Lord, O families of nations, ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts. Worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness. Tremble before him all the earth. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. The world is firmly established, it cannot be moved. He will judge the peoples with equity. Okay, so here the nations are called, come, O families of nations, all kinds of nations. Okay. What are they called to do? They're called to ascribe. So again, you see a triple call here. It parallels the first triple call. The first triple call was sing, sing, sing. Here it's ascribe, ascribe, ascribe. That word ascribe in actually in the root word and the word that's used in, for example, the KJV is give. That's the most simple meaning of the word. To give or to credit or to assign. That would be the way that word is used. Okay. They are called to ascribe or to give to God or to credit to him his attributes. Those attributes which are glory and strength. Okay. Obviously the implication is, and not to the idols that you were ascribing these things to earlier. Ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory due his name. Okay. Again, his name of course refers to who he is, his character. Ascribe to the Lord or give to him the glory he deserves. And verse 8, that's so amazing because the nations are invited into tabernacle worship. Bring an offering and come into his courts. These are the only two times, that word sanctuary in verse 6 and now the word courts in verse 8. Okay. And of course the Gentiles could only come up to the courts eventually. But it would be such a revolutionary thought here, what David is saying, where the exclusive worship that God had given Israel, the nations were being invited into that. Okay, bring an offering and come into his courts, because he is the only one who is worthy to be ascribed all of these qualities. Okay, then verse 9, worship the Lord in the splendor of his holiness, tremble before him all the earth. God's holiness is awesome. Often we don't think of holiness as awesome. Holiness is a very quiet, passive kind of attribute, but it should cause you to tremble. And of course, that is what we see throughout the Bible. When people come before a holy God, they tremble, they fall on their faces, they are stricken with fear, they think they're going to die, because his holiness magnifies our unholiness. Okay. And so it says worship the Lord. Remember I said different words are used for worship. This word worship of course means to prostrate yourselves. Prostrate yourselves. The nations are called to prostrate. All the earth is called to prostrate itself, to tremble before God. His holiness is awesome. His holiness is also beautiful. That word splendor just simply means beauty. The beauty of his holiness. He's continue to exalt God and invite the nations and even all the earth into that place of worship. And here it is that intimate place of worship, the splendor of his holiness. Say among the nations, the Lord reigns. Remember I said 4 times that phrase appears in the Psalms. This is the second time. Say among the nations what? His sovereignty. Proclaim his sovereignty, which is manifested in creation. The world is firmly established. It cannot be moved or it cannot be shaken. We did that in Psalm 93. We looked at that, not Psalm 93 I think. Was it Psalm 93? No, it's Psalm 90. Yeah, in Psalm 93 we looked in detail on the fact that the earth cannot be shaken, and that's a manifestation of the Creator God. Okay. But another aspect of His sovereignty is His justice. Not just His creative power and sustaining power, but His justice. He will judge the peoples with equity, which simply means fairly, impartially, in uprightness. Okay, so for all these reasons, the nations are invited and called into worship. Not just worship where they are, but into worship in His presence, even into tabernacle worship. And finally, in the fourth section, he goes from the earth and the nations to all of creation. Creation is invited to worship. Let the heavens rejoice, let the earth be glad, let the sea resound and all that is in it. Let the fields be jubilant and everything in them. Then all the trees of the forest will sing for joy. They will sing before the Lord, for He comes to judge the earth. He will judge the world in righteousness and the peoples in His truth. So verses 11 and 12 are very straightforward. It's this resounding, boisterous, joyous picture where the heavens, the earth, the sea, the fields, which also means the land, the trees of the forest, all of them are singing joyfully. Those two words come up, the word singing, even the word resound or roaring. See the word jubilant, the word joy, the word rejoice. The whole picture is that of joyful singing. All of creation, whether it's the heavens and the earth, the sea and the land, the trees of the forest, all of them together, the sea and all in it, which means the fish, basically all of creation is singing joyfully. Look at verse 13. What is it doing here? They will sing before the Lord. So it changes there from to the Lord to before the Lord. They will sing before the Lord, or they will sing in His presence. Okay, before His face is the technical word, that is the literal word. They will sing before Him. Why are they singing before Him? Why are they rejoicing? Why is there such jubilation? For He comes. Okay, and suddenly there's a messianic tone to this psalm. For He comes, He is coming to judge the earth, the world, the same words, the earth, the world, in righteousness, and the peoples in truth. Okay. Earlier it said that He will judge the people with equity. Here it talks about righteousness and it talks about truth. And this is obviously a messianic word. Like one small example is in Acts 17, verse 31. A similar phrase is used. Where Paul is talking about what God has done, for He has set a day when He will judge, and we know that the judge is Jesus, where He will judge the world with justice. And that word actually is righteousness. By the man He has appointed, He has given proof of this to all men by raising Him from the dead. It's Acts 17, verse 31. Okay. The phrase is He will judge the world with righteousness, which is exactly the phrase here, or in righteousness and in truth or faithfully. That word truth and faithful are often interchangeable in the Old Testament. And so here we have, in the middle of the inauguration of the Tabernacle of David, this resounding song which is calling all of the earth and all the nations, effectively the Gentile nations, to leave their idols and to come to the one true God, to come to Yahweh, the only one who is worthy of praise. And not just to praise Him wherever they are, but to even come into the tabernacle, into that place of worship, and to give Him the worship and the praise, the honor, the glory that He is due. Lord, when we hear these psalms and this fact that your glory, your revelation has to be proclaimed to the nations, and we are so privileged, Lord, that we know you, that you've chosen to reveal yourself. We thank you for the privilege of being able to worship you, being able to come before you. We thank you for this easy access we have to your Holy of Holies. Lord, I pray, Lord, just each day, the things that you're revealing of yourself, the wonders that you do in our lives, Lord, that our worship, our praise, our testimonies will be new, will be fresh, will be coming from that place of experiencing you afresh each day. What the psalmist, what David says to all the earth, Lord, may we also do, Lord. May we declare your glory among the nations. May we start, Lord, just with our neighbors. We worship you, awesome God. In Jesus' name. Amen.